That night, my son texted, "You're nothing without Dad's money." I typed back exactly 5 words. "Tomorrow. Meet at the bank." By noon the next day, he'd discovered his own paycheck bore my signature stamp. And when the judge issued the restraining order halting operations at the company he'd been running, the entire courtroom fell silent except for the ticking clock, because everyone had just discovered who the real owner was all along. My name is Eleanor Whitaker, though everyone calls me Nora, and at 62, I thought I'd already weathered the worst betrayals life could offer. I was wrong. The graduation party for my grandson Aidan should have been a celebration. I'd paid for the venue at the Riverside Country Club, the catering from Boise's finest, even the photographer who was currently capturing Sloane's practiced smile as she posed with the diploma. My daughter-in-law had orchestrated every detail except the paying that had been my invisible contribution. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colin's voice boomed through the microphone I'd rented. My son stood at the makeshift podium, his arm around Aidan's shoulders. "We're so proud of what this young man has accomplished. His mother Sloane and I have worked tirelessly to support him through these 4 years at Boise State." I stood near the dessert table, watching condensation drip down my untouched champagne flute. Not a mention, not even a glance in my direction. The servers I'd hired whispered past me with trays of food I'd paid for, serving guests who assumed Colin's success at Whitaker Restoration funded this lavish affair. "Dad's company is doing amazing," Aidan was telling a group of his friends. "Just landed another historic renovation downtown. The Fairmont building, you know, the one from 1892. I knew that contract. I'd seen the paperwork when I'd stopped by the office last week to sign, what was it? Colin had called them routine documents. The signature line had been for Red Clove Holdings, LLC, just another corporate entity. I'd assumed. Colin handled the business now. I just signed where he pointed. After the speeches, after Sloane had accepted compliments for the beautiful event she'd organised, after Colin had handed Aidan an envelope containing what everyone assumed was a generous graduation gift, I found myself alone in the parking lot, loading leftover centerpieces into my Honda while the valet brought around Colin's new Tesla. My phone buzzed at 11:47 p. That night, I was in bed, reading. The house quiet, except for the tick of Richard's grandfather clock in the hallway, the one thing Colin hadn't asked to borrow after his father's death 3 years ago. The text was from Colin. "Thanks for helping with setup today. But honestly, Mum, you need to stop pretending you contribute anything substantial. You're nothing without Dad's money. Maybe it's time you understood your place." I read it 3 times, each word carved deeper than the last. Setup. As if I'd arranged napkins instead of writing checks. Substantial. As if $38,000 for one party was pocket change. Dad's money. As if Richard hadn't built Whitaker Restoration with these hands of mine holding the flashlight while he worked past midnight. Hadn't spent our anniversary dinners sketching blueprints on napkins. Hadn't whispered on his deathbed that he was leaving me everything because you're the only one who knows what it's really worth. I set down my phone and walked to Richard's old office. I still couldn't call it mine. The filing cabinet's bottom drawer stuck, same as always. Inside, beneath tax returns and insurance papers, lay a manila folder I hadn't opened since the lawyers had finished probate. The trust documents were dense with legal language, but certain phrases stood out now with new clarity. Red Clove Holdings, LLC, sole member Eleanor M. Whitaker. All intellectual property, including but not limited to trade names, service marks, and operational systems. Ground lease for industrial property at 4885 Emerald Way, term of 20 years with option to purchase. I pulled out my laptop and searched the Idaho Secretary of State's website, Red Clove Holdings, LLC, formed 6 months before Richard's diagnosis. Manager Eleanor M. Whitaker. I clicked through to Whitaker Restoration, LLC. The operating agreement had been amended 2 years ago. Colin was listed as president, but the company itself was shown as wholly owned subsidiary of Red Clove Holdings, LLC. My husband had been quieter than usual those last months, spending hours with estate attorneys while Colin grew impatient with what he called Dad's paranoia about paperwork. Now, staring at these documents, I understood. Richard had seen something I'd been too grief-blind to notice. He'd built a fortress of paper and signatures, and handed me the keys. I picked up my phone and typed 5 words, "Tomorrow, meet at the bank." Colin's response came immediately. Why, I didn't answer. Instead, I called Pioneer Ridge Credit Union's automated line and listened to the business account balances. Then I opened my laptop again and began making a list. Every auto pay, every authorized user, every guarantee I'd personally signed. The graduation party had cost $38,472. But that was just today. The real number, the one Colin was about to learn, was much, much larger. Outside, Boise slept peacefully. But in my quiet kitchen, sipping coffee at 1:15, I began the methodical process of taking apart everything my son thought he owned. He was right about one thing. This was about understanding our places. He just had no idea his place was built on sand, and I controlled the tide. The autopay screen on my laptop glowed in the pre-dawn darkness. 27 recurring payments linked to my personal accounts. I'd never questioned them before. They were family expenses, weren't they? But as I scrolled through each line item, a pattern emerged that made my stomach turn. Colin's family cell phone plan, $342 monthly. Sloane's Audi Q7 lease, $895. The equity line of credit on their house in Eagle Ridge, $2,400. Country club membership, $650. Even Aiden's student loan payments, which Colin had proudly announced he was handling, $428 monthly. I clicked each box. Cancel. 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 By 6:30 a.m. I'd terminated every automatic payment. The confirmations flooded my inbox like small victories. Then I turned to the business accounts. Pioneer Ridge Credit Union's commercial lending department didn't open until 9, but I knew Cheryl Morrison would be at her desk by 8:30. She'd handled our accounts since Richard first needed a loan for his used pickup and tools 28 years ago. "Nora," she said when she picked up, surprise coloring her voice. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you. How are you managing?" "I need to schedule a compliance review, Cheryl, for all the Whitaker Restoration credit lines." The pause told me everything. Colin usually handles. I'm the personal guarantor on those lines, aren't I? Well, yes. And as guarantor, I have the right to review all documentation and transaction history. Of course. Her tone shifted, became more professional. "When would you like to come in?" "Today at 2. And Cheryl, please have everything ready." "Everything." Next call. Ada County Tax Assessor's Office. The woman who answered sounded bored until I mentioned reviewing property tax records and assessment challenges for commercial properties owned by Red Clove Holdings. "We'll need to verify your authority to access those records," she said. "I'm the sole member of the LLC. I can bring the operating agreement." That would be… Yes, we can accommodate that. This afternoon? 3:30 would be perfect. I made myself breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast. Nothing fancy, and ate mechanically while opening the safe Richard had installed in our bedroom closet. Most people would expect cash or jewelry. Instead, contracts, deeds, operating agreements, and a leather journal in Richard's careful handwriting. The journal's first entry was dated 3 months after his diagnosis, Collins getting reckless. Saw invoices for personal expenses hidden in material costs. Need to protect the company and Nora from what's coming. I'd never seen this journal before. Each entry documented Collins' small betrayals. Inflated hours billed to trusting clients. Equipment traded for cash deals that never hit the books. A secretary let go after she'd questioned suspicious receipts, with a severance that bought her silence. The final entry. 2 weeks before Richard died. Red Clove Holdings structure complete. Colin thinks he's inheriting a company. He's inheriting a job. The company belongs to Nora. Prays she's strong enough to use it when the time comes. My phone rang at 11:15. Colin. Mom, what the hell did you do? My credit card just got declined at a client lunch. The bank says you're not authorized to… I'm not authorized to stop paying your personal bills. Interesting. Perhaps we should discuss this with your client present. Are you at Chandler's Steakhouse? I could be there in 15 minutes. Don't you dare. I hung up. The next call came from Sloane at 11:42. Her voice pitched high with panic. Eleanor, there must be some mistake. The mortgage company just called saying our payment bounced, and the country club sent a notice about membership suspension. No mistake. I've simply stopped subsidizing your lifestyle. But Colin's salary from the company covers about 60% of your expenses. From what I can see, the rest has been coming from my personal accounts. That ends today. You can't just… Can't I check your lease agreement for that Audi, Sloane? Check whose name is on the guarantee. I heard her fingers frantically tapping on a keyboard. Then silence. I believe it says Eleanor M. Whitaker. I continued. Not Colin, not Whitaker Restoration. Me. Which means, if you miss next month's payment, they don't come after you. They come after me. So yes, I can absolutely stop paying for a car I don't drive. This is about yesterday, isn't it? About the graduation party. This is about $38,000 yesterday, $43,000 the month before for your kitchen renovation, $16,000 in December for Colin's surprise 40th birthday trip to Cabo. Should I continue? She hung up. I spent the next hour in Richard's files, photographing every document with my phone, uploading them to a cloud account Colin didn't know existed. The ground lease for the Emerald Way property was particularly interesting. Clause 14.3. Lessee may purchase any outstanding debt secured by the leased premises and assume position of primary creditor. In layman's terms, if Colin's company had loans against the property, I could buy those loans from the bank. And then I'd be both his landlord and his banker. My laptop chimed. New email from Colin, sent to me and CC'd to someone named Mitchell Brennan. Esque. Mother, your impulsive actions today are causing severe damage to Whitaker Restoration's operations and reputation. My attorney will be contacting you regarding the unauthorized interference with company finances. I suggest you restore all payments immediately to avoid legal action. I smiled and typed my reply, adding my own CC to Patricia Morse, the attorney Richard had quietly retained for me 3 years ago, Colin. I look forward to Mr. Brennan explaining how stopping voluntary payments from my personal accounts constitutes interference with company operations. Perhaps he can also explain why company credit cards have charges from Nordstrom, Royal Boise Golf Club, and Le Bernardin, New York. Patricia Morse will be happy to compare notes. Our appointment is tomorrow at 10. 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Game on. Bring everything. I looked at Richard's photo on my nightstand, the one from our 30th anniversary, both of us covered in renovation dust and grinning. You were right, I whispered. It's time. The pounding on my door started at 5:43 a.m. I'd been awake since 5, coffee brewing, documents spread across the kitchen table like battle plans. Through the peephole, I saw Colin's face, flushed and angry, with Sloane hovering behind him. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. You're up early. The mortgage company called at midnight. Colin spat. Midnight. Mum. They're initiating foreclosure proceedings if we don't pay within 72 hours. That's aggressive of them. I sipped my coffee. You might want to call your loan officer. I did. He said the personal guarantee was terminated. Your personal guarantee. Yes, I'm aware. I signed the termination yesterday afternoon. Sloane pushed forward, her usually perfect makeup smeared, hair uncombed. The Audi dealership says they're repossessing the car if payment isn't received by noon. Colin's Tesla payment bounced. The credit cards are all frozen. Even the contractor for the Fairmont building is demanding cash up front because the company credit line was suspended. Sounds like you have a busy day ahead. I started to close the door. Colin's hand shot out, stopping it. You can't do this. I'm not doing anything. Colin, I've simply stopped doing things. There's a difference. The company will collapse without those credit lines. I pulled a paper from the stack on my table, holding it up so he could see. The operating agreement for Whitaker Restoration, LLC, Section 7.2. Any change in executive management without written consent of the parent company constitutes a material breach. You promoted yourself to CEO 6 months ago without asking Red Clove Holdings. That's my company. Colin. Mine. His face went pale. Dad left me the business. No. Your father left you a job. He left me the business. I showed him another document. The trust. Read it yourself. All shares, membership interests, and ownership rights in any business entity. But I've been running everything for 3 years. You've been playing CEO with someone else's toys, and you've been doing it badly. I picked up the forensic accounting report Patricia had rushed for me. $63,000 in client entertainment last year that coincidentally matches your family vacation receipts. $38,000 in equipment purchases that trace to Sloane's jewelry and your golf clubs. Should I continue? Sloane's voice cracked. We'll lose the house. You'll lose the house you couldn't afford in the first place, the one you bought assuming the company profits would keep flowing. I set down my mug. Your combined legitimate income is $130,000 a year. You're spending $300,000. The math isn't complicated. This is about control, Colin snarled. You've always resented that Dad trusted me with his legacy. I laughed, actually laughed for the first time in days. Colin, your father wrote a journal. Would you like to hear what he really thought about your management skills? I retrieved the leather book, finding the entry from 2 years before Richard's death. Colin lost another skilled carpenter today, too proud to admit he'd misread the blueprints. That's $40,000 in rework we'll have to eat. He's got the confidence, but not the competence. Dangerous combination. Colin's face flushed deeper. That's not. He never said. Of course he didn't. He loved you too much to crush you while he was alive. But he loved the company and me too much to let you destroy it after he was gone. We need those credit lines restored today, Sloane said desperately. The Fairmont project requires competent management. I pulled out my phone, showing them an email. I've already contacted Jim Reeves at Meridian Construction. He's willing to take over the project, honor all the subcontractor agreements, and keep the crew employed. All I have to do is reassign the contract from Whitaker Restoration to a new entity. You can't do that. Read the contract. The client hired Whitaker Restoration, or its assigns. Red Clove Holdings controls the trade name. I can assign it to anyone I choose. Colin stepped back, his jaw working. What do you want? What I want. I moved closer to the door. I want the $2,300 your father and I saved to start the company. I want the nights I spent doing payroll while you were at football practice. I want the birthdays Richard missed because he was finishing projects to keep you in private school. I want the retirement we planned but never got because cancer doesn't care about dreams. My voice had risen. I forced it back down. But what I'll settle for is control of what's mine. You have 48 hours to deliver every company record to Patricia Morse's office. Every contract, every receipt, every bank statement for the past 24 months. If even one document is missing or altered, I'll file criminal charges for embezzlement. Criminal, Mom? You can't be serious. The forensic accountant found 17 instances of check fraud. Your signature on checks made out to cash that never appeared on the books. That's a felony. Colin. Per instance. Sloane grabbed Colin's arm. We should go? Smart woman. I looked at my son one last time. The bank meeting is at 2 this afternoon. If you want to keep any role in the company, any income at all, you'll be there. Bring your laptop with all the passwords. Bring your company phone. Bring your corporate credit cards, the real ones, not the personal cards you've been hiding as business expenses. And if I refuse, I shrugged. Then I call Jim Reeves at 8 a.m. and sign over the Fairmont project. I call the bank and report the fraud. I call the IRS about the discrepancies between reported income and actual deposits. Your choice, Colin. Show up with everything or lose everything? They left without another word. I watched their Tesla pull away the one with 3 missed payments, according to my banking app, and noticed the repo truck parked 2 houses down, waiting. I closed the door and returned to my kitchen table. There were 6 more documents to review before the bank meeting. Richard had been thorough, but the final moves would be mine to make. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Whitaker. This is Tom Castellano, foreman at the Emerald Way shop. Heard there might be changes coming. The crew wanted you to know we remember who really built this company. We're with you. I smiled and typed back, Thank you, Tom. Take care of the crew. Changes are coming, but not for the people who actually work. Then I called Patricia Morse. How quickly can we file articles of organization for a new LLC? With expedited processing 24 hours, what are we calling it? I looked at Richard's photo, Whitaker Legacy Construction, and Patricia. Make sure the operating agreement is ironclad. I've learned what happens when you trust family without verification. The Forensic Accounting Group's office occupied the top floor of a building overlooking downtown Boise. I'd hired them 3 days ago on Patricia's recommendation, paying their rush fee without hesitation. $28,000 seemed reasonable to document what I already suspected. Marcus Webb, senior forensic accountant, laid out the files with practiced precision. His team had worked through the weekend, and it showed in the comprehensive tabs, highlighted entries, and post-it notes marking the most egregious violations. Mrs. Whitaker, in 23 years of forensic accounting, I've rarely seen such systematic misappropriation. He opened the first binder. Your son was clever, I'll give him that, but not clever enough. Each page told a story of small betrayals that added up to grand larceny. A $5,000 materials invoice for the Harrison renovation that traced to a Rolex purchase. Client site inspection, charges for weekends in Sun Valley. Specialty tool procurement that matched perfectly with the dates Sloane's Instagram showed her new designer handbags. The total, I asked, though I'd already done my own calculations. $473,000 over 24 months. That's just what we can prove with documentation. The cash transactions are harder to trace, but we estimate another $100,000 minimum. Patricia Morse leaned forward. This is enough for federal charges, wire fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement. We're talking serious prison time. I stared at the numbers. $500,000. While I'd been living in the same modest house Richard and I bought in 1995, while I drove a 10-year-old Honda, while I clipped coupons out of habit more than need, my son had been bleeding the company dry. There's more. Marcus continued. We found a pattern of bid manipulation. Colin would submit inflated quotes for restoration projects, then subcontract the actual work for 60% of the bid price. The difference went into a separate account. What account? He slid another paper across. C&S Consulting, LLC, registered in Wyoming for privacy. Colin and Sloane are the members. They've been parking money there, presumably planning to drain Whitaker Restoration completely before walking away. My phone buzzed. Colin. At the bank. Where are you? I checked the time 2:15 p. Let him wait. We also discovered this. Marcus produced a contract dated 6 months ago. Colin attempted to sell the Whitaker Restoration name and client list to Infinity Construction Group. The only reason it didn't go through was that he couldn't prove ownership of the intellectual property. Because Richard had put it all under Red Clove Holdings, my throat tightened with gratitude for my husband's foresight. Patricia spoke carefully. Eleanor, what do you want to do with this information? Can we use it as leverage without filing charges? The threat alone should be sufficient. But Colin needs to believe you'll follow through. Oh, he'll believe it. I gathered the documents. Marcus, can you create a summary sheet? Just the highlights, the Rolex, the Sun Valley trips, the Wyoming LLC, 1 page, bullet points. Give me 10 minutes. While he worked, I called Cheryl at Pioneer Ridge Credit Union. We're running late. Can you keep the conference room until 3:30? Of course. And Nora. I pulled the records you requested. Colin's been making some interesting moves with the company credit lines. Interesting how he's been drawing cash advances against the credit line, then reporting them as material costs. Except the material vendors show no corresponding payments. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. How much? $80,000 in the last 6 months alone. I hung up and turned to Patricia. Draft a demand letter. Full repayment of misappropriated funds, immediate resignation from all positions, and transfer of any claims to company assets. In exchange, we don't pursue criminal charges. That's generous, considering he's still my son, stupid, greedy, and arrogant. But my son, prison won't teach him what poverty will. Marcus returned with the summary sheet, clean, Devastating. Undeniable. Each bullet point referenced supporting documentation. The last line was the kill shot, CNS Consulting LLC, $247,000 in diverted funds as of report date. We arrived at the bank at 2:58. Colin sat in the conference room, his laptop open, fingers drumming on the table. He'd aged 5 years in 3 days, stubble unshaven, shirt wrinkled, the confident swagger replaced by something hunted. "You're late," he said. "No, I'm exactly on time." I set the forensic report on the table with a deliberate thud. "You were early because you have nowhere else to be. The Fairmont project manager called looking for you this morning. I told him you were indisposed." Cheryl entered with a box of files. "Here are the credit line documents you requested, Mrs. Whitaker, including the personal guarantee signatures and the recent cash advance history." Colin's eyes darted between the files. "What is this? This is reality." I opened the forensic report to the summary page. 473,000 in documented theft. The Wyoming LLC with another $250,000. The attempted sale to Infinity Construction. Should I continue? His face went grey. I never thought I'd find out. Never thought the grieving widow would audit the books. Never thought your father would protect the company from beyond the grave. Patricia slid the demand letter across the table. "You have 2 options. Mr. Whitaker, sign this, or we proceed with criminal charges. The FBI takes wire fraud very seriously." "FBI," his voice cracked. "You transferred stolen funds across state lines to your Wyoming LLC. That makes it federal." I watched my son crumble. The arrogance, the entitlement, the sneering dismissal of my contributions, all of it collapsed into the reality of consequences he'd never imagined facing. "If I sign this, I have nothing." "You have your freedom," I said quietly. "You have the chance to start over. You have the opportunity to become the man your father hoped you'd be, instead of the thief you became." "Mom, don't." I stood up. "You texted that I was nothing without your father's money. The truth is, Colin, you're nothing with it. Maybe being without will teach you what your father and I learned building this company, that everything worthwhile requires actual work." He signed the papers with shaking hands. Each signature was another nail in the coffin of his delusions. When he finished, Patricia notarized them with efficient finality. "The passwords," Cheryl prompted. Colin turned his laptop around, showing a spreadsheet of accounts, passwords, and security questions. I photographed it, then changed every password while he watched. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked, sounding like a lost child. "Get a job," I said. "A real one, where you earn your paycheck instead of stealing it." I left him sitting there, Patricia and Marcus flanking me like an honor guard. In the parking lot, I finally let myself breathe. "What's next?" Patricia asked. "Now we rebuild. Honestly this time." I looked back at the bank. "And Patricia, draw up incorporation documents for a new company, but this time, make sure the ownership structure is transparent. No more hiding behind LLCs and trusts. If someone wants to know who owns it, they can look me in the eye and ask." The Greater Boise Chamber of Commerce luncheon was the social event of the month for the business community. I hadn't planned to attend these gatherings, had become Colin's domain, while I faded into the background. But Patricia insisted I needed to establish my presence as the true owner of Whitaker Restoration. "You've been invisible too long," she'd said. Time to be seen. The Riverside ballroom buzzed with conversation as I entered. Heads turned not toward me, but toward Colin, who stood near the podium adjusting the microphone. He hadn't seen me yet. Sloane worked the room beside him, her smile bright and artificial as she touched arms and laughed at jokes I couldn't hear. I found a seat at a back table with Tom Castellano and 3 other foremen from the shop. They'd bought their own tickets when they heard I'd be attending. "Mrs. W.," Tom whispered. "You sure about this?" "Just watch," I said. The chamber president called for attention at 12:30 sharp. "Before we begin lunch, Colin Whitaker of Whitaker Restoration has asked to say a few words about the company's recent expansion." Colin took the microphone with his old confidence seemingly restored. He'd managed to clean himself up, fresh haircut, pressed suit. That salesman's smile that had fooled so many clients. "Thank you all for being here. Whitaker Restoration has been a cornerstone of Boise's historic preservation for 28 years. He paused for effect. "My father started this company with nothing but tools and determination. When he passed 3 years ago, I took the reins and have grown the business 40%. A polite smattering of applause. I remained still. "But I want to be honest with you all," Colin continued, his voice taking on a performative sincerity. "Building this company hasn't been a solo effort. My wife Sloane has been instrumental as our chief operating officer." Sloane stepped forward, waving like a pageant queen. The program's sponsor board behind them displayed in gold letters, "Whitaker Restoration, Sloane Whitaker, COO." "And of course," Colin added with a casual glance around the room, not finding me in the back. "My mother has been supportive. She helps where she can, though at her age, we try not to burden her with the complex aspects of modern business." Someone at the next table whispered, "How old is his mother? 90? Colin wasn't finished. "My father built the foundation, certainly. But let's be honest, it was a different time. Simpler. What we've accomplished in the last 3 years, modernizing operations, securing major contracts like the Fairmont building, establishing our digital presence, that's what's driven our success. My father was a craftsman, but he wasn't a businessman. Everything of value in this company today came from my vision and leadership." The room erupted in applause. My table stayed silent. Tom's knuckles white as he gripped his water glass. Colin raised his hand for quiet. "Some of you may have heard rumors about recent changes at Whitaker Restoration. Yes, we're restructuring, cutting dead weight, making difficult but necessary decisions about who truly contributes value." He looked directly at the back of the room now, finally spotting me. "Sometimes that means acknowledging when someone's time has passed, when their sentimental attachment to outdated methods holds back progress. My mother, bless her heart, still thinks business runs on handshakes and paper receipts." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "She doesn't understand modern finance, digital marketing, strategic scaling. She still balances her checkbook by hand." More laughter. I pulled out my phone and typed a single word to Patricia, "Proceed." Colin continued his performance. "The truth is, my father left behind a small operation doing maybe 600,000 in annual revenue. We're now at 2.3 million. That growth didn't come from nostalgia or his old-fashioned methods. It came from my strategic vision, my relationships, my understanding of what today's clients actually want." "He's lying through his teeth," Tom muttered. "Wait," I whispered. "So, while I appreciate everything my parents' generation did with their limited understanding," Colin said, his voice dripping condescension, It's time to acknowledge that Whitaker Restoration's success is a product of new leadership, not old sentiment. My mother can enjoy her retirement knowing the company is in capable hands. After all, she never really understood the business side. She was just the wife who occasionally answered phones. The room applauded enthusiastically. Several people turned to look at me with pitying expressions, the doddering old woman being pushed aside by progress. Sloane took the microphone. We're also excited to announce that Whitaker Restoration will be partnering with Infinity Construction Group for a major development project. This partnership represents the future, not the past. My phone buzzed. Patricia. Injunction filed. Process server entering building now. I watched a man in a polo shirt and khakis weave through the crowd toward the podium. Colin was shaking hands, accepting congratulations, basking in his moment of triumph. Colin Whitaker. The process server asked loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. Yes. You've been served? He handed Colin a thick envelope. Temporary restraining order. Whitaker Restoration. LLC is enjoined from using the trade name, entering contracts, or representing itself as Whitaker Restoration pending resolution of ownership disputes. The room went silent. Colin tore open the envelope, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and then something close to fear. Additionally, the process server continued, pulling out a second envelope. Sloane Whitaker, you've been served. Notice of termination from all positions at Whitaker Restoration and its affiliated entities. Effective immediately. Someone's fork clattered against a plate in the silence. I stood up slowly, every eye turning toward me. You're right about one thing. Colin, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. Your father did leave behind a $600,000 operation, and in 3 years, you've grown it to $2.3 million in revenue. What you failed to mention is that you also grew it to $1.8 million in debt, $500,000 in stolen funds, and 3 lawsuits for breach of contract that you've been hiding. Gasps rippled through the crowd. You also failed to mention that the restructuring you referenced is actually a forensic audit that discovered you've been embezzling from the company your father built with his own hands. The same hands that taught you everything you know about restoration before you decided his knowledge was worthless. Colin's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. But the most important thing you failed to mention, I continued, walking slowly toward the podium, is that you don't own Whitaker Restoration. You never did. Your father left it in trust, controlled by Red Clove Holdings, LLC, sole member Eleanor Whitaker. That would be me, the doddering old woman who doesn't understand modern business. The chamber president stepped forward awkwardly. Perhaps we should... One more thing, I said, now standing directly in front of Colin. That partnership with Infinity Construction, you just announced I had a lovely breakfast with their CEO this morning. They're partnering with the new company I'm forming, the one that will employ every honest worker from Whitaker Restoration, honor every legitimate contract, and pay every valid debt. You, Colin, are partnering with no one, because as of this moment, you have nothing left to offer. I turned to address the room. For those of you with projects pending with Whitaker Restoration, you'll receive letters tomorrow outlining the transition. Your projects will be completed on time, on budget, by the same craftsmen you trust, just under new management. Mine. Tom Castellano started clapping. Slowly, others joined in the contractors who'd been cheated, the clients who'd been overcharged, the employees who'd been mistreated. Not everyone applauded, but enough did. I walked back through the crowd toward the exit. As I passed Colin, frozen at the podium with the restraining order in his trembling hands, I paused. "You were right about something else," I said quietly. "I'm nothing without your father's money, but you forgot the most important part. It was never your father's money alone. It was ours. Built together. Preserved together. And now, protected from you." The main conference room at Pioneer Ridge Credit Union had never felt smaller. Colin sat across from me, his attorney Mitchell Brennan beside him, while Patricia Morse and Cheryl Morrison flanked me. The documents between us might as well have been a battlefield. It was 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, exactly 1 week after the chamber luncheon disaster. Colin had aged another 5 years in those 7 days. His email that morning had been desperate. "Need to discuss resolution. Please." "Let's begin," Patricia said, sliding a folder across the table. High Plains Bank has agreed to sell the commercial loan for Whitaker Restoration to Red Clove Holdings at 72 cents on the dollar. That's a discount based on the company's current distressed status. Mitchell Brennan frowned. "You're buying your own debt." "Not my debt," I corrected. "The debt of Whitaker Restoration, LLC, which Colin has been operating without authorization from its parent company. The loan documents are quite clear. Red Clove Holdings, through the ground lease clause 14.3, has the right of first refusal on any debt secured by the property." Cheryl added, "The bank would rather sell to Mrs. Whitaker at a discount than pursue foreclosure, especially given the forensic audit findings." I pulled out my checkbook, yes. The same hand-balanced checkbook Colin had mocked, and wrote a check for $864,000. This represents 72% of the $1.2 million outstanding balance. Colin's voice came out strangled. "Where did you get that money?" "From the investment accounts your father set up 30 years ago, the ones you assumed were part of the company assets. They weren't. They were personal, in my name only, managed by a firm in Seattle you never knew about." I signed the check with deliberate precision. "Your father understood diversification. Another thing you never bothered to learn." Patricia produced the next document. "This is the notice of assignment. Once Mrs. Whitaker purchases the loan, she becomes the senior secured creditor. All company assets become collateral under her control." "All assets?" Mitchell leafed through the pages rapidly. "The equipment, the vehicles, the contracts in progress. And," I paused for emphasis, "the intellectual property, including the Whitaker Restoration name and trademark, which was pledged as additional collateral when Colin expanded the credit line 6 months ago without reading the fine print." Colin's face had passed pale and entered translucent. "You're stealing my company." "No. I'm exercising my rights as a creditor to protect my investment. You're welcome to continue operating the company under supervision, with a court-appointed manager, and after returning the stolen funds." "I don't have $500,000. "Then you have a problem." I pulled out another document. "This is a default notice. Whitaker Restoration has failed to make 3 consecutive loan payments. As the new creditor, I'm calling the loan. Full payment due in 30 days, or I foreclose on all assets." Mitchell tried one more angle. "This is clearly predatory." "Predatory." Patricia's voice was sharp. "Colin embezzled $500,000. He attempted to sell company assets without authorization. He's been operating in breach of the LLC agreement for 2 years. If anyone's been predatory, it's your client." I opened my tablet and showed them a screenshot. This is CNS Consulting's bank statement. $247,000 transferred from Whitaker Restoration over 18 months. Colin, you have assets. They're just hidden in Wyoming. That money is gone, Colin admitted quietly. Spent. The house payments, the cars, Sloane's business ventures that failed. Then we moved to the alternative. I placed a final document on the table. Asset purchase agreement. Red Clove Holdings will buy the physical assets and contracts of Whitaker Restoration for the assumption of legitimate debts to vendors and employees. Estimated value $300,000. The rest of the loan is forgiven in exchange for Colin's agreement to never use the Whitaker name commercially and to refrain from any restoration business in Idaho for 5 years. A non-compete. You can't. I can, and I will. Take the deal, Colin. It's more generous than you deserve. Cheryl's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then showed me the screen. The wire transfer from High Plains Bank just cleared. You now officially own the loan. Colin looked at his attorney, who shrugged. Take the deal. The alternative is bankruptcy, criminal charges, and no possibility of starting over. I need Sloane to agree, Colin said weakly. Sloane filed for separation yesterday, I informed him. My investigator saw her loading suitcases into a rental car at your house. She's already agreed to cooperate fully with the forensic audit in exchange for immunity from prosecution. This was news to Colin. His hands shook as he reached for the pen. Before you sign, I said, understand what you're agreeing to. You walk away with nothing except your freedom. No company, no assets, no claim to anything your father built. You get to keep your personal items and enough money to rent an apartment for 2 months. I'll provide that from my personal funds, not the company's. After that, you're on your own. You're my mother, he whispered. How can you do this? Because I'm your mother, I replied. And watching you destroy yourself with greed was killing me. This isn't revenge, Colin. It's intervention. Your father saw what you were becoming. He protected the company and the employees from you. Now I'm protecting you from yourself. Prison would destroy you. Poverty might save you. He signed every document, each signature more defeated than the last. Mitchell Brennan notarized them with professional detachment. There's one more thing, I said, pulling a single sheet from my purse. A job application. Tom Castellano needs an apprentice carpenter. Manual labor, 40 hours a week, $18 an hour to start. You'd learn the actual craft your father mastered, from the ground up. No management, no office, just honest work with your hands. Colin stared at the application. You want me to work for Tom? He was my employee. He was your father's friend. And he's willing to teach you what Richard always hoped you'd learn, that there's honor in actual work, not just in taking credit for others' labor. This is humiliation. No, embezzling from your dead father's company was humiliation. This is redemption, if you're strong enough to take it. Colin folded the application and put it in his pocket. He stood to leave, then turned back. Did Dad really write those things about me? In the journal? I met his eyes. Every word. But he also wrote this. I opened the journal to the last entry. Despite everything, I love my son. I pray that someday, when the easy money is gone and the false pride is stripped away, he'll find the man I glimpsed when he was young, the one who wanted to build things, not just own them. Colin's eyes filled with tears, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him in years. The job with Tom, he said quietly. Is it really available? Start Monday, 7 sharp. Bring work boots and humility. You'll need both. He left without another word. Mitchell Brennan gathered his papers and followed. Patricia turned to me. You know he might not show up Monday. I know, but his father believed in second chances. So do I, just not third ones. Cheryl stood and shook my hand. Your husband would be proud. Nora, you saved the company and gave Colin a chance at redemption. Richard always said the foundation matters more than the facade. Time to see if Colin can learn to build from the ground up. I signed the final transfer papers, officially moving the loan to Red Clove Holdings. Tomorrow, I would meet with the employees to announce the new structure. Next week, we'd begin operations under the new name Meridian Heritage Works. The Whitaker restoration sign would come down. But maybe, if Colin showed up Monday morning with work boots and willingness to learn, the Whitaker name might eventually mean something honourable again. The courtroom at the Ada County Courthouse was smaller than I'd expected, but Judge Martha Reynolds commanded it with quiet authority. The emergency hearing had been scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, 2 weeks after I'd assumed control of the Whitaker restoration loan. Colin sat at the defendant's table with a different attorney, someone from the public defender's office, judging by the overwhelmed look and overstuffed briefcase. Mitchell Brennan had withdrawn from representation when Colin's retainer check bounced. This is the matter of Red Clove Holdings versus Whitaker Restoration, LLC, Judge Reynolds announced. Petition for temporary restraining order and permanent injunction. Ms. Morse, you may proceed. Patricia stood with the confidence of someone holding all the cards. Your Honour, we're seeking an immediate restraining order preventing Whitaker Restoration and Colin Whitaker from using the trade name, entering new contracts, or accessing company assets pending resolution of ownership disputes. She laid out the case methodically, the trust documents, the ground lease, the loan assignment, the forensic audit showing embezzlement. Each piece of evidence built on the last like a wall of legal bricks. Your Honour, Patricia continued, we have here the original trust document, executed 3 years ago, transferring all business assets to Red Clove Holdings, LLC. She handed copies to the clerk. Colin Whitaker has been operating the company without authorization from the parent entity for 2 years. The judge studied the documents. Mr. Whitaker, do you dispute the authenticity of these documents? Colin's attorney stood nervously. We don't dispute the documents exist, Your Honour, but we contend that there was an implied agreement. Implied. Judge Reynolds's eyebrow rose. Do you have any written documentation of this implied agreement? No, Your Honour, but... Then sit down. Patricia presented the forensic audit next. Your Honour, Forensic Accounting Group documented $473,000 in misappropriated funds over 24 months. Here are copies of checks signed by Colin Whitaker, made out to cash, that never appeared on company books. Here are credit card statements showing personal expenses charged as business costs. The judge's expression grew increasingly stern as she reviewed each document. Furthermore, Patricia added, when my client exercised her legal right to purchase the defaulted loan from High Plains Bank, she discovered that Colin Whitaker had pledged the Whitaker Restoration trademark as additional collateral without authorization from Red Clove Holdings, which owns that intellectual property. Is this true, Mr. Whitaker? The judge asked directly. Colin stood slowly. I thought I had authority. Did you or did you not sign loan modification documents, pledging assets you didn't own? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Reynolds turned back to Patricia. What remedy are you seeking? Immediate temporary restraining order, prohibiting use of the Whitaker Restoration name and assets, pending a full hearing. We're also seeking appointment of a receiver to protect remaining assets and complete existing contracts. Your Honor, Colin's attorney interjected. This would effectively destroy Mr. Whitaker's livelihood. Mr. Whitaker destroyed his own livelihood when he stole $500,000. Judge Reynolds said flatly, I've seen enough. She began writing as she spoke. Temporary restraining order is granted. Whitaker Restoration, LLC, Colin Whitaker, and any affiliated parties are immediately enjoined from using the trade name, entering contracts, or accessing company bank accounts or assets. Red Clove Holdings is authorized to take possession of all physical assets pursuant to its rights as senior secured creditor. Colin made a strangled sound. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm appointing Thomas Castellano as temporary receiver to oversee completion of existing contracts and protect the interests of employees and legitimate creditors. Tom, sitting behind me in the gallery, straightened in surprise. Ms. Morse, prepare a formal order. I want it on my desk by noon. Mr. Whitaker, you have 14 days to respond before this becomes permanent. Though, frankly, given what I've seen, I'd advise you to focus on negotiating a settlement rather than fighting a battle you've already lost. Patricia wasn't finished. Your Honor, we also request an order for Mr. Whitaker to immediately return all company property, including vehicles, equipment, computers, and files. Granted. Mr. Whitaker, you have 48 hours to return everything. And I mean everything down to the company pens in your desk drawer. Sheriff's Department will supervise the handover. Colin's attorney made one last attempt. Your Honor, my client has a family to support. Then he should have thought of that before embezzling from his father's company. Judge Reynolds said, Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with finality. In the hallway outside, Colin caught up to me. Mum, please, you've made your point. This isn't about making a point. Colin. Then what? What do you want from me? I turned to face him fully. I want you to understand what your father built, not the money, the reputation. The trust of clients who knew that Whitaker meant quality and honesty. You traded that for Rolexes and resort weekends. I can fix this? No, you can't. But maybe you can build something new, something honest. I pulled out the job application for Tom's apprentice position, now slightly crumpled from being in my purse. This is still available. Minimum wage to start. But Tom will teach you everything your father wanted you to learn. I have an MBA from Boise State. And you used it to steal. Your father had an 8th grade education and built something that lasted 30 years until you got your hands on it. Patricia joined us. Colin, you should know that the district attorney's office has been asking about the forensic audit. Criminal charges are still possible. His face went white. You said if I signed the agreements. I said I wouldn't pursue charges. I clarified. But if the DA's office decides to investigate independently, that's beyond my control. Though I imagine they'd look more favorably on someone actively making restitution and showing genuine remorse. Working as a carpenter's apprentice would show remorse. It would show humility, something you've been lacking since the day your father died. Tom Castellano emerged from the courtroom. Mrs. W. Did the judge really just make me receiver? Temporary receiver. You'll oversee the contracts, make sure the men get paid, keep the work flowing. Patricia will handle the legal aspects. Tom looked at Colin. That offer for apprentice work that Colin couldn't meet his eyes. You were my employee. I was your father's friend, and I'm offering you what he would have a chance to earn your way back. Not to the top, just back to respectable. My phone buzzed. A text from Sloane. Can we talk? I have information about other accounts Colin hid. I showed it to Patricia, who nodded. Tell her to come to my office at 2. Colin saw the text. Sloane's turning on me too. Sloane's trying to avoid prison, Patricia said bluntly. She signed documents as COO. That makes her liable. Cooperation is her only option. We walked toward the exit, Colin trailing behind like a lost child. At the door, I stopped. Monday, 7 at Wem, at the Emerald Way shop, I said. Tom will be waiting. Show up with work boots and ready to learn, or don't show up at all. But Colin, if you do show up, if you work hard, if you prove you can be trusted with small things, maybe someday you'll build something worth putting your name on, something your father would have been proud of. Colin's eyes filled with tears again. He really set all this up. The trust, the holding company, all of it. Every detail. He saw what you were becoming and loved you enough to prevent you from destroying everything. The question now is whether you can see it too. I left him standing in the courthouse lobby, staring at the job application. Patricia and I had a meeting with the company employees in an hour, where we'd announce the transition to Meridian Heritage Works and guarantee their jobs were safe. Think he'll show? Patricia asked as we reached my car. His father believed in second chances. So do I. I looked back at the courthouse. But come Monday at 7 a.m., we'll know if Colin believes in them too. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Emerald Way industrial complex as I arrived at 3 p.m. sharp. The sheriff's deputy was already there, along with Patricia, Tom Castellano, and a small crew of workers who'd stayed to witness this moment. The Whitaker Restoration sign, 30 feet wide, illuminated, professionally mounted, had presided over this building for 15 years. Richard had been so proud the day we'd installed it, standing with his arm around Colin, who was 17 then and still believed in earning things rather than taking them. Mrs. Whitaker, the deputy said, we are ready to execute the writ of possession. I nodded. The crane operator Tom had hired started his engine. The mechanical arm extended toward the sign as Colin's car pulled into the lot the Tesla had been repossessed. So he was driving a 15-year-old Civic he'd bought with the 2 months' rent money I'd given him. He stood frozen, watching the crane's hooks attached to his name, or what he'd thought was his name. You came, I said simply, to watch you destroy everything Dad built. No, to watch me protect what your father built from what you turned it into. The sign creaked as it lifted away from the building. Workers guided it down onto a flatbed truck. Underneath, the ghost outline of the letters remained on the sun-faded wall. Tom handed me the new sign's remote control. You want to do the honors? The new sign read, Meridian Heritage Works, in dignified bronze letters. Below it, smaller text, established 1995, the year Richard and I had started everything with $5,000 and boundless optimism. I pressed the button. Motors hummed as the new sign rose into place. The workers applauded. Colin stood silent. Patricia handed me the final document. Asset transfer agreement. Once you sign this, Meridian Heritage Works officially owns all equipment, contracts, and intellectual property. I signed it against the hood of my Honda, using the same pen Richard had used to sign our first business loan. It's done, Patricia announced. Whitaker Restoration, LLC, is officially dissolved. Long live Meridian Heritage Works. Tom stepped forward with a clipboard. Mrs. W. I've got employment agreements for all the crew. Everyone's staying. Same pay, same benefits. Just a new name on their checks. One by one, the workers signed. Men who'd known Richard, who'd taught Colin how to hold a hammer when he was 12, who'd watched him grow from eager apprentice to entitled executive to whatever he was now broken, perhaps, but maybe redeemable. I walked over to Colin, pulling one last paper from my folder. This came for you yesterday. He read it, his face crumpling. The bank's calling our home mortgage due. You pledged it as personal guarantee for a business line of credit you used for vacation property in McCall, the property you never told Sloane about, the one titled Only in Your Name. I'll lose everything. You already lost everything, Colin. The question now is what you'll build from nothing. Your father did it. I did it with him. Now it's your turn. I handed him the apprentice application one final time. Tom will be here Monday at 7 a.m. The job is still yours if you want it. Colin looked at the fresh sign, at the workers heading home to families supported by honest work, at Tom standing patient and willing to teach. Then he looked at the application. Why? He asked. After everything I did, everything I said, why offer me anything? Because your father's last words to me were about you, not the company, not the money he said. Don't let him fall so far he can't get back up. Colin's hand shook as he filled out the application. Name, address, soon to be changed. Previous experience, he left that blank. References, he asked quietly. Put me down, Tom said. I knew you when you were worth knowing. Maybe you can be again. Colin handed the completed application to Tom, who nodded once and tucked it into his shirt pocket. 7 sharp, Tom said. Bring work boots, work gloves, and water. You'll need them all. As the sun set behind the building, casting the new sign in golden light, I pulled out the final surprise, a small bronze plaque I'd had made. It read, In memory of Richard Whitaker, Master Craftsman, 1959-2022. He built with integrity. Tom helped me mount it beside the entrance, using the same masonry screws Richard had always preferred. Colin touched his father's name on the plaque. He really was a master craftsman, wasn't he? The best, I said. But more importantly, he was an honest man. That's the legacy worth preserving. Patricia gathered her papers. We're all set. Eleanor, the company is yours, free and clear. Not mine, I corrected. I'm holding it in trust for the people who actually build things. Tom, you'll run operations. I'll handle the books properly this time. And maybe, if Colin proves himself with a hammer, he can earn his way back to helping run it. Someday. Colin met my eyes. I'll be here Monday. I know you will. As everyone dispersed, I stood alone in the parking lot, looking at the new sign illuminated against the darkening sky. My phone buzzed a text from Aidan, my grandson. Grandma, Mum told me everything. I'm sorry I didn't thank you for graduation. Can we talk? I typed back, Sunday dinner, 5 p. Um, Bring your appetite and your questions. Both will be answered. The last car left the lot. I walked to the building one more time, running my hand along the brick wall Richard had repaired himself 20 years ago. You could still see where his careful work met the original construction invisible to most. But I knew where to look. "You were right, my love," I whispered. "The foundation matters more than the facade." Monday morning would come soon. Colin would either show up or he wouldn't. But either way, Meridian Heritage Works would continue building with integrity, one honest day's work at a time. I drove home to my empty house, not empty of memories, but empty of illusions. On my kitchen table sat the leather journal, Richard's final gift of truth. I closed it and put it away. Its work was done. Tomorrow, we'd start writing a new chapter, one where the Whitaker name might mean something again, not in bronze letters on a building, but in the quality of the work and the character of the workers. Colin had texted 3 words while I was driving, "I'll be there." I smiled and typed back 5 words, the same 5 that had started this journey. "Tomorrow, meet at the shop." But this time, it wasn't about tearing down. It was about building up. The story had come full circle. The son who'd sneered, "You're nothing without Dad's money," was about to learn what his parents had always known. You're nothing without integrity. Everything else, money, reputation, success, is just facade without that foundation. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about Eleanor's journey. What would you have done in her position? Let's discuss in the comments.